Absolutely.
Great.
Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to give it maybe one more minute and let a few other people join, but thanks for coming. All right, we're holding maybe steady. So, good afternoon. Thanks to everyone for coming to the first Lunch and Learn hosted by the Law Practice Management Task Force of TIPS of the 2022-2023 bar year. This TIPS task force is dedicated to helping you with the running the business side of running your business or your law practice. And we have a great program for you today. My name's Hillary Fox. I am in-house counsel with litigation services for Allstate Insurance, and I co-chair this task force with my esteemed colleague, Rich Williamson. He is a partner at Robertson, Johnson, Miller, and Williamson in Reno, Nevada, and he will be moderating this panel today. So I will turn it over to him. Thanks, Rich.
Great. Thank you, Hillary. I appreciate the introduction. As Hillary said, my name is Rich Williamson, and I'm very proud to provide you with our panel today. We have Denise Damasio with Farmers Insurance in San Diego, California, Marcy Hogan-Greer with Alexander DuBose and Jefferson in Austin, Texas, and Arlene Zaliet with Liberty Mutual in Boston, Massachusetts. So I want to thank you all for joining us, and I want to particularly thank our panel for putting this on today, as well as our co-sponsor, the Staff Council Committee. So I want to just, I realize everyone's time is precious here, so I want to get right into it. So Denise, I'll start with you. Can you, I guess, provide us with a short explanation of how you rose from just being a regular lawyer and contributor on up to your current management position?
Sure, Rich, thank you. My path has been somewhat bouncy. So I started with Farmers as a line attorney, as we call them. And after a number of years of practice, there was a management opportunity. I was then working in the Fresno office in Central California, handling litigated cases in all of Central California, and had the opportunity to become the manager there in 2007. So it was just kind of a natural progression, but I had to own that management training. After a few years in that role, I had some family circumstances that required me to move back to San Diego, and I became a supervising attorney there because the San Diego office already had a manager. And then from there, my role expanded into offices in the Orange County, Santa Ana area and Inland Empire, San Bernardino, Riverside area. And I'm now the manager of those offices. So I'm spanning the state.
Wonderful. Marcy, how about you?
So I have a likewise very twisty turny path in terms of getting to my current position. When I started the law practice, I wasn't sure I was going to stay in it. And I really got turned on to the law and loved it, loved the practice, never saw myself as necessarily being a partner at the time, much less being a manager. And because I just love the practice of law. And over the years, I grew and developed and started kind of getting interested in the business side and how the deals actually work, because some things that seem very important to a law practice don't make sense from a business side. So you have to learn how to make the business case for everything. And so I got pretty good at that. And then, as my husband says about his job, you get Peter principled up until you exceed your competence. Anyway, I was when I came over to this firm, it's an appellate boutique. There are 17 lawyers, and we're all specialists in appeals and trial collaboration. And it's more of a horizontal management level, but I had done some management over at my prior firm, and so got interested in helping out on some technology issues, et cetera. And then the next thing I know, they're like, we need you to run for managing partner. So I've been in that role now since 2019, i.e. right before COVID. So that was an interesting time to be taking over. And then I lost my CFO in April of the first COVID year, 2020, right after it announced and to a firm that was developing COVID testing, because he's an operations and finance guy. So he really, he wasn't wed to the law, and this opportunity to save the world came, and I couldn't talk him out of it, unfortunately, but we were able to hire our current CFO over Zoom, and it's been a great partnership. She's absolutely amazing, has been with us now almost 3 years. And so that's kind of my path. I've had to learn a lot along the way and educate myself. But one of the things I will just do a quick shout out here. Anytime that I can be on a panel with Arlene and Denise, I'm happy to do it because I learned so much from them, because they do great deep thinking about these issues. And so I'm going to ride along and maybe throw in some anecdotes, hopefully amusing, but pay attention to them and you'll get some real knowledge today.
Thank you. And yeah, I guess while we're giving shout outs, I need to give one right back to you, Marcy. Everyone should know that Marcy's actually in trial right now. And so we are so grateful that she made time for this panel. Arlene, can you kind of explain your path to management for us?
Certainly. And I want to say Marcy is our tips warrior, trial and lecture the same afternoon. So kudos to you as always. My path, just as Denise and Marcy explained, very non-traditional, non-linear. Started out in private practice with a very small firm, doing everything from wills to criminal to small claims, to finally kind of gravitating towards some tort cases. I don't tell anyone I started as a plaintiff's attorney, and also did a little bit of defense work. I found I liked the defense work best. It was a natural fit for me. I then went from private practice in-house with a staff counsel operation. And I started out as an individual trial attorney at that organization. Then I became a group leader and finally an office leader. And then I left that job to become a manager at another company of a staff counsel office. And there from managing one office, I then managed one state, and then I became a regional responsible, for many states. And then here's the diversion. I left the legal department and I went into the claims department, and I worked in claims, and I also worked in litigation management. So I interfaced with outside counsel firms. And I would say my time in claims really best prepared me for understanding how things look on the other side of the telephone and how things sound. And I could then come back into the staff legal operation and took, again, a non-traditional role. My next job in staff counsel was responsibility countrywide for ethics, training, and quality assurance, quality and audits. And from there, I came to Liberty Mutual, where my initial job here was kind of the number 2 in the staff counsel operations, doing really operational work countrywide. And when my predecessor retired, I had the privilege of taking over the countrywide operation for Liberty Mutual.
Okay. Well, thank you, all three of you. So then I think particularly, I guess I want to start with Denise and Arlene, because it sounds like both of you had the challenge, or perhaps all three of you had the challenge of coming into a position and maybe both managing some colleagues that you had worked with before, but also new folks, new territories, new firms, and kind of new personalities that maybe you hadn't worked with before. So I guess I'd like to maybe spend some time breaking down each of those. First, was there any challenge managing people that used to be your peers or that you had worked with on a more equal level and then became your subordinates?
Arlene's nodding, so she goes
Okay.
first.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah. When I understood that this would be a question, I literally applauded, because that is one of the most challenging thing anyone who's in the audience, and Denise and Marcy and yourself, will ever have to do, because you went from being an individual contributor, everybody's buddy, you could go out on the Friday night, nobody was really watching what they said around you. And frankly, when you're an individual contributor, your success is measured in terms of yourself, and you're kind of worried about yourself and maybe not that much more. And I think the way I was able to kind of make that break from my friends and my colleagues was through the old-fashioned expectations and communication, kind of called it radical candor, that we had to just all sit down together and say, hey, I'm really honored that I'll have the chance to be the leader of this office, but things are going to have to change. You know, you're not going to see me behaving in exactly the same way. I still care about you. I still have our common success as our goal, but I can't participate in the same way. For example, you know, we used to be able to commiserate. I used to say Friday night, we could say how much we hate the boss, but understand that in my new role, we can't have that conversation unless you want to come and tell me how much you hate me. But also, you know, you could whisper to me, we could tell something, but understand as the manager, and I thought this was the biggest change, as the manager, anything you tell me is kind of on the record. There are no off the record conversations, at least in corporate America. There are no off the record conversations with the manager of the office. And I want everyone to understand, please don't tell me that. If you don't want me to know something, you know, please don't share it. So I felt that by setting that expectation that things would change, and by then being just honest and open about it, that what would be different and how it would be different, I thought was critical. And just one story I want to share, and Denise probably has the same experience, is that we also manage people who for the first time are becoming managers, and they have to have those conversations. And we really want to encourage them and try to tell them our story, like, hey, we did it. It was painful at first and you get used to it. And my least favorite story is I was managing a new manager, and she had been a very social person, and she had a habit of vacationing with her staff. A couple of the people in the staff, they were sort of three fast friends who would go on all these ski vacations and these beach vacations, all these exciting vacations. And when she became manager, I came to find out that she continued those vacations. So of course, the other 30 people in the office would watch three people, the manager and two people, go off on the vacation. And, you know, that obviously didn't sit well. And I had to go and meet with her and say, please, I realize you're enjoying your vacation history, but unless you're going to go with all 30 people, which HR doesn't recommend, I'm going to have to ask you to stop and to not go with those two people. Well, lo and behold, I come to find out it was hard for her to stop, and she just wouldn't tell people she was going. But then the three of them would come back with suntans in the winter, you know, and windburns in the summer. And it kind of reached me again. And I had to actually go meet with her and say, please, you don't understand the impact this is having on the rest of the office. So I also just want to throw out there that for those of you in the audience who are managing new managers, feel free to use that as your worst case scenario story, and just impress upon people the impact that that has when the manager doesn't make that separation. Denise?
Yeah, the transition from individual contributor to manager with people that we complained about the company together. We had Friday night happy hour together. We complained about the boss together. We complained about the work together. We complained about the technology together. And now all of a sudden I'm their boss. And it felt like a breakup. It felt like, okay, we can't do that anymore. And I wasn't as good as Arlene was about the expectations and communication. I would say that I handled it more like a slow burn. So I would just silently detach myself from them, make sure that our conversations were at work and they were about work, and try to send the message, hoping that they get it. But the feedback I got from the people that had been my peers was initially, oh, great, now you're going to want us to be like you. You know, you're going to expect us to work like you. You're going to expect us to work the hours you work. And it was a really powerful lesson for me in managing people, that you can't expect people to be like you. You have to take who they are and try to make them better and in compliance with the corporate guidelines, the practice, the ethics, but really let them be authentically themselves, because that's where they're going to do their best work. And because I was going to have that tendency to say, this is the right way to do it. I've been doing it this way for years and it's worked. It's a successful way, but it just didn't work for them. So being able to listen to them and have them help me in my journey and the transition was really a powerful lesson for me, and that I have carried on through my career. But the first 3 to 6 months was really awkward and painful, but we got through it together. I did end up having those discussions with my team about expectations and communication, and be like, there's no confiding anymore, right? And I'm not going to be going to happy hour anymore. It's not because I don't care about you. It's just because there's now a different line in the sand. And so I have new obligations, but I still care about you. I'm still here about you. We'll work through anything you have together. And so the listening, the letting them educate me, and setting the expectations were probably the three biggest takeaways.
Okay. And then Marcy, how about you? I mean, you're coming from a more small to mid-sized firm. Did you have that same challenge breaking away from your peers into a management role?
Well, actually, I made partner at a very large firm. And I was going to say that is a very nuanced process. And there's a lot that's kind of paved the way in that process in law firms. And I think those direct conversations are less likely to happen. I certainly didn't have them. Now you're a partner, now you go to partner meetings. I mean, people understand, because lawyers intuitively know, I think most of them, that once you're a partner, you're in a different situation. But it is awkward because now all of a sudden, the people who were your peers and like you said, happy hour dinners, vacations, are now subordinates, even if they're not direct reports. And so you have to manage that. And it is awkward. I mean, it's exciting because you tend to be in a class with a large law firm. So you've got others that you can share the experience with. And I was fortunate enough that some of the people who made partner when I did were friends, good friends, or who had recently made partner. And so I had some people to go to, and the members of my team were younger. So they were used to me being in a more senior position. We weren't peers as much. But it was hard because, one of the things that I have found most challenging, and I'm finally learning to do it, is delegation. Authentic and true delegation. Let people do it. Because I heard Denise's point, and people are like, I can't be you, Marcy. And I don't want them to be me, but I want them to do excellent work, in their own way, and be responsive, et cetera. And so you've got to let them, handle it themselves and trust them. And part of that, to Arlene's point, is you have to learn the business from the ground up so that you understand how it works, so you understand what they're doing. I mean, I started my law firm career as a runner for a law firm in Atlanta while I was in college. I worked in a copy center. I've done it all, literally. I've done secretarial work. I've done paralegal work. So I understand what mechanically it takes to produce a brief and get it on file, which helps when I'm communicating with my team. But I also have learned to find the right people to work with. And I truly believe, and I may be, maybe all the smart people who know about management disagree with this, but I truly believe there are chemistries involved in people working together, and that you can try to force people who just are like oil and water to get along, and it's not going to work. Despite all the managing tools that you can give and all the professionalism, things build up over time. And I'm all about, let's see if there's a better solution. Let's see if we can move people so that people who are working together well work together well. I mean, I've had my paralegal came over with me from my other firm. We've been together 25 years now. And it's just, my life is so much easier because she understands what I need and can think through it before I get there. And other lawyers, you have to let them go and give them a general assignment, give them enough facts that they know what they're doing, but then be rewarding with compliments and praise as well, as constructive criticism in a nice way. So the delegation piece was tough because I always was like, well, I can just do it faster than I could tell somebody how to do it. But you have to get past that because, and it's not that I would do it that much better. It's just that I would do it that much faster because I wouldn't be explaining and then following up to see where it is.
Sure. That makes sense.
Rich, let me just add, part of my journey when I became a people leader from an individual contributor, one of the people that I was now leading was the person that had been my boss. So he had decided that he was going to leave that role and just wanted to handle litigation. And now I was his boss and he had previously been in that role. And so now he was the one commiserating with all of the other people in the office. And he was the one going to happy hour. And he had a different level of knowledge from his previous role. And so I did have a huge concern if, are you poisoning the well? Are you setting me up for failure? And so those discussions were not easy discussions to have with him because you wouldn't have left your position if you weren't disgruntled.
Right.
And So because you're disgruntled, you're going to share that emotion with everybody else in the office, and that's not productive for anybody. But it was just a little additional challenge I had in the journey.
Yeah, well,
It's
and
not
that
little.
one, yeah, just a bit. And yeah, that one's challenge, just as your colleagues were afraid that you would expect them to lawyer like you did. Now you have this subordinate that might expect you to manage like he did.
Exactly.
Sounds like perhaps not successfully. And so, yeah, that's a difficult dynamic. Denise, let me stay with you. So, kind of coming up, I guess, and making manager in Fresno, like you said, you're surrounded by friends and colleagues. Then coming to San Diego and also working with some of the other offices. Was it easier or harder managing strangers than peers?
They both have challenges, but they're different. So coming into changing offices and coming to San Diego, now you're the outsider. And that's a different challenge than being the insider that goes from individual contributor to leader. So, you're the peer, you're the commiserator. Now you're the outsider. They don't know anything about you. They don't trust you. They don't know how good of a lawyer you are, what kind of manager you are. And so my approach then was to take the first couple of weeks and really just spend some time talking to them, getting to know them, not really making any moves, but trying to see how all the pieces were fitting together in that particular office, what the chemistry was in that particular office, looking at the files and their work to get an idea of where their strengths and challenges were, and then taking everything that I had learned from observation as the starting point for moving those people forward.
Okay.
I would just say
Arlene, how
that
about you? Yeah.
I would say Denise makes such a great point about kind of you're the outsider, and I can commiserate. I came to a new company in a leadership role, and I was the outsider on a national basis. And it was a little harder because you couldn't call up 1,500 people and say, hey, I'm Arlene and I'm nice. And I agree with what Denise says, the rumor mill, the gossip, the things that people, knew for facts about me were things I had never even heard of. It's like, whoa, what's happening? And then you realize it's fear-based, people don't want change, and you're new and you're in charge, and they're wondering, is the world going to be, turned upside down by that? So the one thing that I had the chance to do once I realized how much fear-based it was, that I just could start putting out, this was before podcasts and all, I could just start putting out memos saying, the things that I like so much about the current state of operation, kind of saying don't worry, your whole world is not going to be destroyed. So start with the positive. This is what I've observed that I think is excellent. This is what we want to keep. But here's, then eventually after a couple of months, well, then here's some things now with analysis that I hope you can support us looking at with fresh eyes, and then finding people around the country who could be my champions in that part of the country.
Okay. Yeah. So not coming in and upsetting the entire apple cart from the beginning, but it sounds like both of you had a period of assessment and kind of normalizing your presence a little bit before you exerted yourself.
Well, and I'll be happy to be
please.
the foil on this one and tell you how not to do it. So when I came to my new firm, I came from a firm that at that point had 2,900 lawyers. It's now Norton Rose Fulbright. Great firm, loved it. Just this was an opportunity to do something completely different and specialized in what I did. And so when I came over, I was always saying, well, at Fulbright, we did it this way. And of course, this is a 17 lawyer firm. It's a very different, it's sophisticated and wonderful, but it is not the same as it was there. And so I had to stop and I started having to bite my tongue every time I wanted to say at Fulbright, because Fulbright Norton Rose had very sophisticated systems and procedures and things like that. And then I had to look and embrace what did work. I wish I had been smart enough like Arlene and send memos about, this is great about this and this and this, but I learned to appreciate, that there are things like the technology at first was not where it needed to be. And, I basically got very involved in that and got in the technology committee and we got it fixed, but it took some time, and so something like that. And we were using a time system that Thomson Reuters has abandoned. And, it was horrible. And so I had to behind the scenes try to make that happen because I couldn't even enter my own time, and I'd always done it myself. So that got changed, but other things didn't need to change. And I was just so gung-ho on, here's a great idea, that I needed to step back. I was not in management at the time of this firm. I was just a partner, but not just a partner, but I was a partner, but I was not a manager, so to speak. And so I learned a lot from listening to people about how it worked, and not just other lawyers, but our incredible admin team is amazing, and just learning from them and how they did things a little bit differently, but it's like, oh, wow, that's great to know. And so I definitely say do as Arlene and Denise said, and not as Marcy did.
You learned along the way. And so I guess as you then came into your current management role, had you, I guess, kind of assimilated into your current firm or adopted many of the things they were doing? And was it then easier at that point, or do you still struggle with the hesitancy to maybe look at ways things were done in the past?
No. I mean, but by the time I became managing partner, I had been at the firm for 5 years.
Okay.
And so I had assimilated, I understood how things worked. It's kind of the, what is it, the prayer of St. Francis, the wisdom to know the difference of what I can change and what I can't. And so there are great things about this firm that I embraced and focused on. And then some of the more mechanical stuff that needed to be fixed, I tried to get that fixed, and we did. And I think we're in a better place with a better platform now as a result. And it wasn't always easy. A lot of people didn't like change, and a lot of people are not comfortable with change. And I try to be sensitive to that. But what I've done is build individual relationships, which I have the luxury of being able to do because we're so small. We have like 31 people total. So I feel like I have a personal relationship with every person. And that's just the way that feels right to me. I think you have to manage according to your comfort level. And I know that probably everybody doesn't love me. I don't need that, but I do like to get along with everybody. And I feel like I have a good relationship with everybody at this point. And they may go on happy hour and talk about me in the way that who knows, but I do think that not having friction is worth it. You just get so much more done. Everybody's so much happier, and a lot of times it's just having a conversation and breaking through the communication barrier.
Yeah. So I'd like to come back to, Denise, the example you mentioned about your former manager who then went back to being a lawyer. And I guess ask each of you, how have you struggled with the balancing between being a lawyer and being a manager? And are you called upon to dig more into the day-to-day legal issues that those under you are dealing with? And even if you're not called upon, do you feel compelled to do so? So I guess, Denise, let's start with you.
Yeah, so Arlene is going to be on a completely different level than I am looking over nationwide operation, but I am, a couple of offices of lawyers, and I don't ever want to lose my skills of being a lawyer. That's just my personal preference. And I have a fair amount of less tenured lawyers in my office that I embrace being able to be their manager because they keep my legal skills intact by being able to direct them and teach them. And as long as I can stay a subject matter expert in what I need from them, I'm better able to get them there. So I would say that my position is still a balance of being a lawyer and being a manager.
Okay. Arlene, how about you? It sounds like you're a little more on the administrative side, but.
Actually not, it's a very
Okay.
interesting concept. I'm same as Denise. I would say it's still 50-50. I mean, quite simply, I can't do my job unless I really understand the legal issues in a particular case. I can't evaluate whether someone has done a good job and whether somebody should be advanced, to a higher level of complexity of litigation in our organization. I get called by claims, I don't know, 15, 20 times a day. because something's exploding in a case and they need advice. And frankly, I think I'm doing more lawyering now than when I was inside the courtrooms. It's just that it's trying to understand it on a 50-state basis.
Yeah,
But the basic skills of counseling, understanding litigation, understanding client needs. I'll get called by accounts, by large accounts, because we do a lot of commercial work.
Sure.
And they're expecting me to explain how a statute works, how it's going to work in this courtroom, how does the trial evidence work. So what's the main evidence in this case? Why are we asking them to pay money when it's a self-insured retention? So I would say pleasantly surprised that that still is a big part of my world. But some days it's a lot.
yeah.
Yeah, I would say, Rich, that my role is changed from, I'm no longer invested in the cases, I'm invested in the lawyers.
Okay, interesting. Okay. Marcy, how about you?
So my experience is very different because, I am a lawyer first, and I have to be a subject matter expert at what I do because we're a boutique, a specialty firm. So I practice law a lot. I would say 80 to 90% of my work is the practice of law. And the management piece, at times it can be heavy. When we've got something going on that we need to deal with. And there have been times, especially in COVID, when we were figuring out, how we were going to be. We were lucky that we could kind of all go home and just keep practicing and not miss much of a beat. But as with any organization, it created some issues and things, especially with the detachment piece. I think that was the hardest for us, finding ways to engage so that people felt still connected. But as far as the management, I need to rely on my team, my admin team. We call ourselves the big three. Like my daughters went to a camp where the three leading counselors who were in charge of programs and tribes and something else were the big three. So we call ourselves the big three because we have one who's in charge of operations and one finance, and then myself. And it's an all-woman team, which is I'm really proud of. We didn't plan it that way. It just worked out that way, but it works well. I think everybody's happy with the group, and I rely heavily upon them. And I think because we need them to run that part of it, and that's where their expertise is. And so I think it's worked out really well because I really don't want to give up the practice of law. I love what I do. I've been doing it for 34 years, and there's a reason I want to keep doing it. So
Good. So I want to go off again. I think Denise's comment on kind of being invested in the lawyers is a good one for managers to focus on. And so with that in mind, I guess both what can your respective organizations or just organizations in general do to better cultivate not just lawyers, but also managers and managers to be? So I guess, Arlene, why don't we start with you with that one?
Thanks. That's a really great question. And the answer is quite simply a lot. Now, there's very formal ways that this happens, and then there's powerful informal ways. So the formal ways are obviously once somebody either raises his or her hand or we raise it for them, then they immediately start some very defined management training or introduction to management, overview of management, see if it's what people like. A very defined, it starts out as a defined course that everybody takes the same curriculum. There's classes, there's measurements, there's evaluations, reevaluations. So they're seeing if it's right. It's like a try it on. People are saying, is it right for them? And you're evaluating, do you think it's a good fit? So everyone's assessing the fit. And then for people who say, yes, I like this, I want to keep continuing, it goes from the very general that everybody had the same curriculum to a customized curriculum. What exact management role are you being prepared for? What are the right developmental courses, steps, counseling that's right for you for that role? And also meeting people where they are. If somebody, like I like to use the example with my team, if we know somebody has really strong emotional quotient, you know, EQ, well, I'm not going to send them to a 6-week course on EQ because I think they're doing great with it. But if I have someone who is like phenomenal in every other way, but maybe that's where I think they need development, then I'm going to have a very customized course of development for that person. So that's the kind of starting with the formal, you know, the general, the customized, and then the informal, which I think everyone on this call knows and has either received or performed. The informal is so rich. I mean, it's mentoring. It starts with mentoring, you know, is the basic, but then there's, I call it phone a friend. There's someone you just reach out to no matter what time of the day or night, who says, you say, hey, I'm new in management, or I'm being cultivated for management, and I don't get this, or I'm not comfortable with that, or this is what happened, and it's a ticking bomb, and how can you help me kind of dismantle that? And I think that is so effective. And then I love now that we do a lot of peer-to-peer, you know, no manager in this conversation. It's peer-to-peer. What are you feeling? What are you feeling? What are you feeling? What did you do? And then I also like that there's this other component, which is a supervisor, a person at a higher level is available to help you if you'd like. And then we also do, which I know everyone on this call does, as a skipped levels, where it's several layers of management above will come and work with, counsel, meet with newer people in their careers to really give a full view of both what the person's skills are and really how we can help. So I know it's a long-winded answer, but it's one of my favorite questions.
Good, yeah, well, and it's yeah, I'm glad to hear it's a comprehensive answer. Denise, what about you?
You know, I'm going to echo Arlene that there's a lot that we can do. And she, you know, she mentioned if they raise their hand or we raise it for them. So in my journey, my hand was raised for me. So I don't think I ever really got to process whether or not it was the path I wanted. It's worked out. So I think that it starts with talking to people. Is this a path that they want? And then how can we cultivate that path with them? And there are a lot of different paths. There is the formalized training and classes they can go to. But, you know, I find it unfortunate that hard work, desire doesn't seem to be enough anymore. So you have to have, at least in my organization, you have to have sponsorship. So you have to have people that will stand behind you as you raise your hand. And then because we have a nationwide organization, we can pair them up with somebody similarly situated or somebody that's already in a management role that's not directly in their office, not in their chain of command, that is the phone a friend, the safe person to go to for mentorship and learning, somebody to ask questions to, expand their knowledge of beyond their local geographic region, and to get them there and identify their strengths and then look out for opportunities for them to grow, give them some assignments that give them a little more exposure to upper management, to the claims organization, and really get them ready for that. And I think where we have to be careful, and Arlene may see this more than I do, is that we do have some people in management positions that are somewhat afraid to develop the next generation of talent. Why would I mold somebody to take my job? Like if I do a really good job getting this person ready for the next level, is that next level my job? So, and not having that fear, but having the confidence to say, this is the path this person wants. I'm going to do everything I can to give them there, give them all the resources, get them all of the exposure I can, because that's my responsibility to them and to the organization. And I would rather develop that talent and have them stay in the organization than develop that talent and have them leave.
Yeah.
And Rich, can I just add, this is the
Please.
point at which
Yeah.
I think all of us want to talk about DEI.
Yeah.
So certainly in management development, either volunteered or voluntold, where DEI principles are very much front and center for us. So we want to make sure that our slate of management developees is representative of the communities in which we practice. And we have a very intentional program and plan to ensure that our kind of class, as Marcy would say, a class at a firm, our class is truly a class that represents all affinities, all backgrounds, all identifications, all gender, everything, so that we're preparing everybody equally for management opportunities.
Okay. And then Marcy, how about you? Your firm and what can law firms in general better do to develop lawyers into managers?
Well, I think in some cases you need to tell them, this is how I see you. And I think that can be incredibly powerful. I remember when I was taking the board exam and I was on maternity leave with my second child, and one of the partners was taking the board exam with me. And she said, we were out at lunch, and she said, why aren't you on partnership track? And I said, well, I've got these two children, and I've got, all this. Of course, she had three, and she was a partner. And, I had taken a reduced hours track when I first joined the firm, Fulbright. And that was important to me, and I wanted to make it work, but I was doing a lot more than those hours. And there wasn't really a track at that point to become a partner. And so I thought about it, and my husband was thinking about going back to get his PhD, and we chatted and said, maybe it would make sense for me to go on partnership track. I think I'm the only person in the world that went back from second maternity leave and got on partnership track as opposed to off. But I decided that way I could make change, and eventually we were able to create a reduced hours partnership track for women, and actually men started joining the program we designed, which was very exciting to me, because I don't think it should be a mommy issue only. But I cannot emphasize enough Arlene's point about the DE&I piece of it. And I will say, and just again, shout out, when Arlene spoke on retention and promotion within a company, it really opened my eyes that you don't just look at where people are, you look at where they could be if given certain, experiences, certain opportunities. And it's our job to go out and tell them, you need to do this, this, and this. And I've been being much more proactive about that, even within my own firm. And I'm very proud that one of my good friends who I said, it's time for you to be a partner, and here's what you need to do. And I want to be able to call you my partner. And she did it. She embraced it. And she became a partner. She'll be a partner in January. We just made her a partner. So I'm super excited about that. But I do think that women in particular and lawyers of color tend to sit back and want an invitation to get in the room because they're not sure. I know that was certainly me. And when someone is telling me, I see you in this role and I see you as a manager and a leader, it's like, really? Me? And it makes a difference when someone says that. And I think we have a duty to reach out and say, okay, you may have the old fashioned story about, the women have 8 of the 10 requirements and they say they're not ready, and the men have 2 and they're already applying. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but that is a personality type. It tends to align somewhat with gender, but I think that we lose out if we don't make the ask of them. And because I've had several conversations through my career where I've said, I see you in this role. Why don't you do it? And it makes a difference.
Yeah. So it sounds like all 3 of you are kind of echoing that point of it's incumbent upon managers to not just wait for people to raise their hand, but like you said, go out and identify people and actively cultivate them.
And tell them what tools they need. I mean, you have to be very specific. And like Arlene was saying, the tailored program, here's what you need to do, these specific things, and to make it to the next level. But I think that's our job as managers.
Good. Okay. I'd like to shift gears a little bit with some of our remaining time and talk about a little more of just kind of a nuts and bolts management issue, and that's dealing with difficult employees. I'm sure all 3 of you have had this situation, and I guess what lessons or guidance can you provide to people on how they can better manage the people below them, particularly the people that maybe need a little more management?
Let's start with Marcy.
Okay, all right, yeah.
Well, I think the one thing that whether they're it's a co-employee or someone you're managing or a boss or anybody, is to try to understand where they are and not let it get under your skin, because the few times, well, there's been more than a couple of times that it's gotten under my skin when there's been a difficult situation. In one situation, I'd had a long relationship with this person, and it had been great. And then all of a sudden it started going south for reasons beyond my control, certainly, probably that person's as well. And I had to learn that it was not me, and not let it fill all of my thoughts, because I tended to, be so anxious about trying to work it out. And I even got to the point where I had to say, okay, for every negative thought of this person, I have to make up 3 productive thoughts about things I can do to change something, which I now know is called dialectical behavioral training. And I didn't even know it. So maybe I should get a master's in psychology, but it was just a survival tool for me, quite honestly. And I think that that's the first thing is when you let it become subjectively and personal, it's gonna beat you every time. You've got to keep it objective and keep it. And I've gotten a lot better at that, which I think is helpful. But sometimes you have to make hard decisions. Sometimes you have to think creatively about, what is it this person's not getting, and how can we reformulate their role to get that need fulfilled, play to their strengths, etc. I mean, there are a lot of different strategies. There are as many as the stars in the sky. But I think focusing on the individual and trying to understand them and what they're going through. And sometimes it's just like open-ended questions. Hey, let's go to lunch. What's going on? And then you find out that it's completely unrelated to anything to do with work. And, you bust through that and build trust and try to help them get through the hard time.
Good. Denise, how about you? How do you deal with managing difficult employees?
I agree 100% with Marcy that you have to find out what's going on with those employees. What is it that is making them a difficult employee? Because you never know what slice of life anybody brings to the table on any given day. And I say that people are either reactors, meaning they encounter a difficult situation and they react immediately, or people are ones that flip the light switch. So I'm a light switch flipper. So I will have the conversation, give the benefit of the doubt, try to find what's going on. If there is an improvement, I'll have the conversation again. The third time I'm having the conversation, I'm truly out of patience. So, and I have to also step back and realize how my delivery is being received. And I've also got to look at that person and figure out what word choice is going to work with them is best, because I have a tendency to give people analogies. And what I have found is if you give somebody an analogy or a specific fact situation, their response back to you will be directed solely to that fact situation and not the big picture that you're trying to give the example of. Mm-hmm. So it comes down to, knowing your audience, knowing who you're talking to, being able to identify, if you can, the reason that they're difficult, give them proposed solutions and clear expectations, and then it's in their hands. The power has now shifted back to them. Okay.
Arlene, what about you?
I agree with what is said. The hardest thing is not to take it personally. It's not about me. It's just not about me. There's obviously something else going on. And I also like to be introspective, like, did I actually do something wrong? Did I say something like, I have a little saying I say to myself, the boss is not always right. I mean, I hope I'm not always wrong, but the boss is not always right. So, what did I do? Did I say something? Was I, using the wrong word, or the wrong sentence? As Denise said, I could trigger somebody and think it was a great conversation until I get a note from ER, that there's a complaint. So I do think it's this duality of you can't take it personally, but you at the same time have to be introspective and say, did I do something? So it's a little bit of balancing that ambiguity, really, to try to get to the bottom line and to move forward.
Okay. All right, thank you. I want you briefly, I should have mentioned this earlier, certainly if any of our attendees have any questions that we're not asking, Again, the moderator is not always right either, so feel free to put those in the chat. But I want to go back to this idea of kind of encouraging people to step up to management. And so maybe I'd like to hear from each of you on, are you glad that you've taken on a management role generally? And is there anything on your path that you would have done differently? So it's a two-part question, actually. So Arlene, why don't we stay with you on that one?
Wow, that is a really hard question because I think that I'm very happy. I feel privileged and blessed to be in my current role. I feel honored that I kind of have the fate of almost 2,000 employees in my hands, and I try to act judiciously and respectfully to everybody. And so that I feel were all good life choices. So I would say on reflection, they're probably along the line, there were people I trusted as confidants. When I look back, maybe that wasn't the best choice. And there are probably people who gave me wise counsel and I didn't really realize to trust them. So I think maybe with age, and I hope a little bit more wisdom and distance, kind of just realizing who's on your side, who you should trust and who you shouldn't, and maybe from whom you should distance yourself. Those are probably life lessons that I've learned.
Okay. Denise, what about you?
Oh, not every day am I grateful for the path. But you use the clarifier generally, so I'm going to answer
yes,
those
on
first.
balance. Yes, yeah, exactly.
Generally, yes. And because the best part of my job is making a difference in the lives of developing lawyers and having a positive impact on their trajectory and their career. But, you know, those days when you have to have the difficult conversations, or you have employees that you're having that third conversation with that aren't getting it, and you have to take the next steps, or you're bogged down in administrative work that perhaps I personally don't see the overarching value of, and it seems to be box checking. You know, would I rather be taking a deposition that day than doing that and going back to lawyering? Sure, I have those days, but you know, the positives definitely outweigh the negatives. I don't know that I would have done anything differently because I've never taken the time to really assess that. It's kind of, you know, one day at a time, one foot in front of the other. This is what's facing me now. So, you know, I'm happy with the path as it's been.
Good, good, good. And Marcy, what about you?
I'm really happy with where I am. I have a luxury that y'all don't have, that I'm doing most of the management piece. I'm doing a lot less of these days, which is great because I have an incredible group, a team that I trust to handle that part. And also our structure of our firm is very horizontal and very equal and I mean, I may be the managing partner, but we make the equity partners make decisions as a group, and it's hard for me to think of a time that we haven't had a consensus, and it's because we sit and we listen to each other. And I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to try this type of a management structure. It doesn't work for big organizations. Obviously, you do things differently, but we have the luxury of, you know, sitting down, and we sit down in a room together a couple times a year and do Zoom otherwise, but we talk. And I remember there have been times when I've gone in and I'm like, this is absolutely the right decision. This is what we need to do. You know, I have my logic lined up, and then I'll go in and I'll listen to my partners. And, you know, and this has even happened with all the way to, you know, the admin, from admin to other lawyers, et cetera. And I've learned to listen and to trust, to have confidence that it's okay to change your mind if it's the right thing to do. And that's been a wonderful learning experience, and it's a privilege to be here. And I'm just lucky because I have such a great group of people that love what they do, take pride in what they do. We geek out over the craziest things. You would not believe some of the emails that go around. You know, do you italicize a comma after EG, et cetera, you know, but also very, you know, erudite points of law and things like that. And it's fun to have a brain trust. So I've got kind of the best of all worlds.
Good. Okay, last question really for everybody. If you could give one piece of advice to a new manager, what would it be? And so I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but Marcia, since we were already chatting, I'd like to start with you.
Listening. I mean, really active listening. You can't, I think there's a sense with a new manager that I've got to go in and show that I have earned it. There's an imposter syndrome like crazy that you have to get over. And I think the best way to do it is just listen and get to know your people and find out, you know, who does what, who likes what, and really understand your organization top to bottom.
Denise?
The two things that came to my mind were the two things that Marcy just said, listening and don't lead with ego.
Good. Okay. Arlene, how about you?
Well, I
Or fear.
actually, it really goes back to my mom, may she rest in peace. She used to say to us when we were little, everyone can be your teacher. Just remember, every day, everyone can be your teacher. And I stuck with me so that when I approach everything I really do professionally, and I hope personally, I just think, you know, from whom can I learn today? Who will be my teacher today? And that has served me so well.
Good, good. Well, I just want to, again, I want to thank all three of you. This was a tremendous program. I know it was valuable for me. I hope it was valuable for all of our listeners. And I just really appreciate everything you do for TIPS generally and for putting on this program. I want to remind our listeners that, and I guess I should say our viewers, that our next Lunch and Learn will be scheduled January 13th. So we won't see you till the new year. But again, thanks to the TIPS Staff Council Committee and to everyone on the TIPS Law Practice Management Task Force for helping put this together. Hillary, any closing comments?
No, but I just so appreciate and I'm honored to know the four of you. And thanks for sharing your vast knowledge with our group here today.
Wonderful.
It's been a privilege.
Hope everyone has
Happy
a wonderful
weekend.
weekend. Yeah, exactly.
And everybody gets to fall back on Saturday night.
Oh yeah,
That's
thank you for reminding me. Yeah,
Well, thanks for coming, everyone. We really appreciate it.
take care.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.